Hey guys, I just wanted to come on here and make this video to give you a little bit of an update of what's been happening in my life. It's been a little bit chaotic lately. So basically I got COVID, and within 3 days of having COVID, I was in a 4-car collision where somebody accidentally hit my car, which propelled my car into another car and then into another car. I might have slight nerve damage in my back. I'm not too worried about it though, because I know with God and a good physiotherapist, I'll be just fine. I then had a procedure done which I needed some time to heal from, and I've been organising an operation for my deviated septum, as I'm a bit of a mouth breather and it's gotten worse lately, where I only get 30% of air up one side and almost zero in the other. So I can't even, Anyway, hoping to do that to fix my breathing. And I just wanted to come on here and talk about something that I haven't mentioned before in my healing journey with the loss of my father to suicide. And that is my journey to following God, which has been all over the place. And I'm never going to push my views on anybody. Never. You guys have your own free will, your own choices. You can do anything you want. It is your life. And I respect that wholeheartedly. I'm just talking about me. So when I speak about it, I'll be speaking about it in a way that it's like I'm speaking to another believer, if that makes sense, because I'm not going to try to convince. I'm not going to be saying things to try and convince you into doing it. I'm just going to be relaying my literal raw experience of it. And it's not to discount psychology at all. I don't want anyone to think that. I believe in psychology so much. It's my dream to be a clinical psychologist. Absolutely, it's my dream. And my psychologist is not a believer. We don't share the same views, but he still helped me tremendously. And I don't even think I would have found faith if it wasn't for him helping my mind, because he found the right therapy for me called EMDR, which I'll get into another time. But basically it's for people that have post-traumatic disorders. And it can help get rid of images in your head. It's good for anxiety and depression. And so he was so amazing in how he helped me to do that. And I have a lot of respect for him, a lot of love for him. And I'll continue to see him even though we don't share the same views on that one thing, because I just respect him and look up to him in so many other ways. So with that being said, I'm not here to change anyone else's beliefs, and I respect everyone for what they believe in. I'm just giving you evidence, that I believe that. But I wanted to talk about how during these really bad times you can experience a lot of growth. And that's what I want to talk about with my belief in Christianity and stuff. But before I do that, I just want to give you my raw belief before I go into all of that in my journey. And I found that this has been very powerful for me, because especially this time away from the camera and everything like that, because I originally made this channel for mental health. And training was meant to be a part of it, not all of it. And it has become all of it. And I don't want it to be that way. And I never had intended it for it to be that way. So for me, coming away from it, it's been really good. I've had a lot of growth, a lot of revelations. And I've also realized that I've been in cycles, stuck in cycles since Dad's passing, that I haven't been able to break out from. And that's what I wanted to talk about, was breaking out from these cycles. And sometimes you are in a cycle of negativity, whatever it may be. And sometimes you know it's there. Sometimes you don't know it's there. And the reason why there's cycles is because a lot of the time there are lessons that can be learned that we just don't learn from. Not every time, but a lot of the time. And the reason why we don't learn from those lessons can be a number of things. It might be that we're so in the depths of our depression or anxiety that we don't have any energy to go after it, fix ourselves. We don't want to. We lack the will. We lack the energy, the resources, the want to get out of it. So we just flatline for a long time until hopefully one day we decide to change. But that doesn't happen for everyone, because it requires making a choice. And that is to the point that I want to talk about, making the right choice. Now, this is going to sound really extreme, but I have had extreme things happen to me, and that's why I'm going to explain it this way. But for me, when Dad passed, the cycles that I was in, terrible, very depressed, in grief, very sad. so many things. And I don't want to get into them right now. But it was very, very, very hard to continue with a normal life. But through experiencing that, I came to realize something. And this is not going to be for everyone, so just bear with me. But this is what has helped me. And so anyone else that has experienced something extreme, maybe it will help you. And I just want to be clear, this isn't mental health advice. I'm just relaying my story. So when he did it, after he did it, a long time after, I came to realize that living is a choice. I am choosing to live because I have the power to end my life tomorrow. I could literally end my life tomorrow. I have the power to do it, but I don't. So I'm choosing to live here. Now, I don't have any desire or intention or want or thought to end my life. And because I don't have that, it's a pretty strong choice that I'm choosing to live. Like, it's not questioning and weighing things up. I'm choosing to live. And because I'm choosing to live, I'm then given two other choices that I can possibly make. And this is what I was given by life. Two possible choices I could make. Choice number one, victimhood. I could go down the road of saying, poor me, my father who is my best friend, the person I idolized the most, the person who knew me the best, the person that I've had the most memories with on this earth, has chosen, not accidentally, but chosen for whatever reason, to leave me, my family, and this earth. Now, I could sit there and say, poor me, poor me, poor me, and make these messed up narratives about him, even though I know to my heart that he loved us. I could choose to do that. I could choose to destroy every other avenue of my life. And by choosing to do that and thinking poor me would, because it will keep me in depression for longer. Now, when we are depressed, there's this part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex, and that reduces in activity when you are experiencing something like extreme depression or anxiety. And what that means is that your ability to learn and to conduct behaviors and be the best version of yourself is reduced. So not only are you worse at learning, you're worse at being a better partner, a loving friend, a loving member of your community. You're not your top optimal self, right? And if you let it drag long enough, your hippocampus, the part of your brain that's responsible for memory, can begin to shrink as well. And then that just opens up a whole nother cascade of things. And so for me, someone that wants to be a clinical psychologist, I know that I have the data in front of me. I know what is coming if I continue to go down this route. It's only negativity, only negativity. So that's where choice number two comes in. And choice number two is very simple. It's just accepting this, that we do not choose what happens to us, but we can choose how we react to them. And I don't mean that my dad commits suicide, I'm going to choose to not cry and be upset about it. That's ridiculous. That's not what I mean. By doing what I'm saying, what you will realize is you will choose to react in the most optimal way at the time of the event. And by choosing consistently to choose a growth mindset, a mindset that is not for victimization and is for the betterment of yourself and your family and your loved ones, by choosing that, your decision making will become a lot easier in that it will become easier to make the correct choices. So you start down here really sad. All right, maybe I'll try to get up, make myself some breakfast. All right, maybe I'll go for a walk outside. Choose that. Maybe I'll actually go to the gym. Maybe I'll get back into work. Maybe I'll try to develop better relationships around me. Get closer with people that I love. Progress my career. Do all these things, right? So you're choosing not victimization. You're choosing growth. And by doing that, over time, your life will start to get better. And it has for me. And I'm not saying it's going to be better than what it once was, but by doing this, I'm not saying to do this in a way that you avoid what's happened. No, you take the lessons from it. So you build resilience as you're doing it. So then when other things come your way, you're prepared. But what this is saying is that you're not also going to do the other end of the spectrum where people over prepare and put securities everywhere in their life where they try to prevent bad things happening in their life. Like, I'm going to pay off my mortgage so this doesn't happen. I'm going to do this with this person so this doesn't happen. What I'm saying is life can throw you curveballs that you just can't prepare for. Something eventually will happen. I still remember in psychology first year, we were watching in the lecture theatre a family that had experienced a member that committed suicide. And I remember thinking in that very moment, I am so grateful that my father or mother or sister are never going to do that. I'm never going to be in that situation. Lo and behold, it happened. Wasn't prepared for it. So what I'm saying is not to be pessimistic, but I'm saying that you can't prepare for everything. And so to accept that everything is in your control would be almost foolish, because it's not. The only thing that you have control over is that of which you choose to react to after you have experienced something. So you can choose to be proactive about it or sook. You can choose whatever you want. And I'm not saying sook as in like, for suicide. I was sad for a long time. But I'm saying that after a certain point, there comes a time where you need to make a choice and you need to say, what direction do I want my life to go in? And that is where everything with God comes in, that I really, really want to speak to you about. Because when you experience these hard times and you experience the absolute travesties that life can give you, you do suffer. There's no doubt about it. You suffer. But through that suffering, if you make the right choices, comes growth. And with growth comes wisdom. With wisdom, you are better equipped to handle things in the future. So anyway, I want to talk about my faith. The main reason why I'm making this video, is to tell you about a story of how I came to follow God. And I believe that through my degree, it actually opened my mind a little bit to being able to follow God, because when you have, psychology is considered a science now, but it's slightly different to physics and the hard sciences, because the hard sciences operate within what's called the positivist paradigm, where you need empirical findings to verify your hypothesis. And a lot of the things that you find need to be, it needs to be applicable to many different situations so that you can have basically a constant law. So for example, a ball, when you throw it up, it comes down. A brick, when you throw it up, it comes down. Gravity, right? And so psychology is a little bit different because we don't have constant laws. And so we operate in a different paradigm called the interpretive paradigm, where we accept that some things are subjective. And so because of that, you need a little bit of faith, because how a therapist will conduct therapy, it's based on what's called the scientist practitioner model, where a researcher or a scientist will grab a group of people that have a similar disorder and they will apply a therapy to them. And over time, through reiteration and many other studies, eventually they might come to a conclusion where, hey, this therapy has a positive effect on this group of people with this disorder. Let's inform the therapists. Therapists are now informed. They conduct that therapy for those people. However, that doesn't mean that a certain therapy, like in physics, with their laws, what is constant, it doesn't mean that a certain therapy is going to constantly fix everyone or help everyone that has a certain type of disorder. For me, for example, we tried CBT at the start. I've tried mindfulness in the past. It didn't work for me. We had to do EMDR because that's what worked. But you need to have faith that there will be something that can help you. And so upon realizing this, a lot later, like last year. I realized that could have also opened my mind to, to God a little bit, because at the very beginning of my degree, when I didn't know anything and it was just about analyzing variables, I just thought, well, if I can't see how it helps or, prove that it does this, I don't want to accept it. And with the Bible, you don't really know exactly or see how things happen. That's why it's called faith. But anyway, that's not the only reason. So there's that. And in combination with, up until, my early 20s, especially, I was basically agnostic, borderline atheist. That was because I've had family members, and I'm not going to go into the detail of it, and friends who basically associated with the other side of the law. They would be taking drugs, dealing drugs, doing things that they shouldn't have been doing. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but when you see the things that these people do to other people, and there's no justice, I have no judgment on them. Their lives have been very different as well. And when people act that way and do these things, it's very important not to judge, because we haven't had their childhood, or I haven't anyway. Even though I've had hardship, it's been a different way to theirs. But anyway, I digress. The point is that there was no justice. And I would think about that and I would extrapolate it to there's no justice in Sudan. There's no justice here with starvation. There's no justice to all these infants in third world countries and war-torn countries that have no control over their environment. Where is the justice for them when they get bombed, or when their parents die or get murdered? I couldn't get past that. Starvation, famine, diseases, all of those things to people that don't deserve it. So to me, I was just shut off from God. I did not want to even accept a single thought, right? Fast track, and I'm not going to give you every single minute detail, but to 2021, this was a very, very hard year for me. Very hard. Because in psychology, the most stressful year is your honours year. And a lot of people say that that's just extreme stress as it is. And a lot of people have, breakdowns and things like that. For me, I think maybe because I've experienced other things, it wasn't as stressful as what people thought it was. But the point is that I had that. I had my parents split up just earlier. My mum got diagnosed with thyroid cancer, had to have her thyroid removed. And I'm just listing these things, but at the time, this was all very stressful. And then we found out it wasn't thyroid cancer. My friend passed away. My best friend from primary school's father, who was a second father to me, passed away. And this was all within 3 months. And then my father started to fall, right? And I'm doing my honours throughout all of this. Now, my dream was and still is to be a clinical psychologist. But family to me is so much more important than what my dream is. And my dad did everything for me. So I said to him, Dad, I'm going to drop out of psychology for this year. I'm going to defer, and I'm going to look after you. He's a very stubborn man, very loving man, but very stubborn man, and said, absolutely not, you're going to continue on. He kept falling. He was approaching the census date. I dropped a subject to free up some time so I could look after Dad. And as the weeks progressed, the time in which I needed to spend thinking and looking after Dad increased. But it wasn't about the time for me. It was about the emotional distress. And like I said previously, the prefrontal cortex, when you're going through extreme anxiety and everything like that, reduces in activity. So my ability to retain, and like if my hippocampus was shrinking, who knows, but my ability to retain information and learn was shot. I could not write anything. I would be handing things up to my supervisor, and she was very concerned and was asking if we wanted to do some special thing where I could, defer the year. But because of Dad, I said no. And then the census date passed and I was in the thick of it. And to get into clinical psychology, you need a master's degree. And a master's degree is very competitive. You basically need to be on the competitive side to have a first class honours, which basically means almost straight high distinctions. And I didn't even know if I was going to pass. That's how bad it was. That's the truth, because it just kept getting worse. And my missus saw, and my supervisors were questioning is everything okay? Because my work just wasn't up to scratch like it used to be. And my girlfriend, who's my fiance now, said to me, why don't you just try reading the Bible and just seeing if it helps? And long story short, this is like, I'm giving you the very quick version. I didn't experiment. I chose for it to be an experiment. I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to believe that it's real. Because I read a little bit, so I knew that that's what had to be done. So I said, I've got nothing to lose. Because if I continue how I'm going to be continuing, I'm going to fail. And then my whole 4-year degree will be for nothing because I won't be able to get into masters, which was my goal. And I didn't want to do any other thing in psychology at that time. I just only wanted to do clinical psychology. If not, I was going to go do marketing or something else. So I didn't want it to be that I've spent all that money, I've failed my dad, all of these things were coming into my head. And so I prayed and I started to read the Bible a lot. And I don't know how to explain it other than my brain became a sponge, and when I was sitting in lectures, I would just be absorbing information and I would be getting straight high distinctions on my tests. And you have to remember, I had very little time to study. I had to work, I had to look after dad, I had to still work out just to maintain some sort of mental resilience, and I had all my thesis to write and everything like that, and family stuff going on, friends, the deaths, just everything happening, everything. So there was hardly any time to just sit there and study. But my brain became this sponge. And long story short, I ended up getting straight high distinctions for the year. And I got a high distinction for my thesis. Now that was not me, because before that, for the first 3 months, it was misery. It was absolute chaos. And my work ability was terrible. And as soon as I started doing this, well, not as soon as, but a few weeks after, I had the faith of a mustard seed, and this all happened. And I thought, wow, this is so good. And so then I kept praying for dad, because I knew that you have to wait on God for things. But my dad took his life. And I just remember thinking, and I was so gutted, and I just thought, it's not real. It's not real. But I was kind of upset that it wasn't real, because I had never experienced so much peace and joy. But whilst I was in the middle of all my chaos with my dad and everything and my honours, I still experienced peace and joy through all of that. And I just couldn't fathom how I was experiencing that peace and joy. And anyway, fast track some months, some weeks, and my girlfriend says, let's just try going to church. So I go with her. And there's this lady there at the end, and she asks, can I pray for you? And I didn't know what that meant, and I was very hesitant to allowing her to, but I wanted to be polite, so I did. And she prayed for me. And while she was praying for me, she was saying things. She's never met me before. She knew about me. She knew about what I wanted to do. She knew deep parts of how I was feeling about my dad, just unexplainable things. Just you cannot explain how she knew this stuff. And I was like, wow, how do you explain that? I've never met this lady before. How does she know all this about me? And it's not like you're going to be rich. No, it's not a clairvoyant thing. It was just she knew me. And I just remember thinking at that point, there's got to be something to this. And the presence of this lady, I've never met someone like this. It was just, it would be the definition of holy, like peace, love, joy. That's who she was. Very calm. And so I started going to church. But my mind got the better of me. And I couldn't get past the fact that dad had died. And then I couldn't get past the fact about the Sudanese children that don't have any control over their life. And so I stopped going. And then in March 2023, I got hit with this pretty bad sickness where my spleen swelled, and they thought I had cirrhosis of the liver and all this stuff, and they couldn't explain why. And it was 3 a.m. one night, and I was by myself, and the doctor comes in and says, look, we've run tests, we can't see why this is happening to you. I just don't want to alarm you, but you might have this form of, I forgot what she said, but it was some form of cancer. And at the time I was like, of course, after everything else, of course I have that, being a victim and everything. And then I just stopped, and I wasn't even worried. Like, I literally wasn't even worried about the cancer. It was so weird. I remember, because you'd think you'd be so worried about it, but I wasn't. What I was worried about is that if there is something after this, what is going to happen to me? Not if I'm going to go to hell or heaven, just if I go to heaven, am I going to be, I'll get into that another time. But I just remember, in that moment, I was like, I just remember all I could think about was Jesus. And I can't explain how it happened, but I just started to get this feeling, and I said, look, man, if you're real, and I believe you are, and I want to believe you are, and even though I've fallen off so many times, I promise you, as soon as I get out of here, I will dedicate my life to you. And you get out, and I started going to church every weekend and dedicating my life to him, and then I fell off again because the thoughts start coming back. And so it was a real wrestling with believing if he was real or not, until I learnt about if it's God's will and everything like that. And once I learned that, which I'll explain in another time, I have never looked back. And I have since been into hospital then and have prayed and have come out of it fine. And I've had a car accident and I am already squatting again. It's crazy. And you're going to say, well, your dad still died. Yes, he did. But that's going to be a whole nother podcast on God's will and everything like that. But the point is that is how I came to know and believe in God. I'm going to explain the second half of how I believed in detail later, but that was my journey. Now, the thing that I like about this journey is that at each single point of suffering, God met me there. He met me when my dad had fallen. He met me when my dad had died. He met me when I might have had cancer. He met me when my mum, all of these times that I have fallen, he was there. Yeah, so he met me when I'd fallen each time. And there's a scripture in the Bible that is got by the man named Paul. And I've written it down here, and it says, that is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And just before he said this, the verse just before, God spoke to him and said, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Now, I didn't know about these scriptures at the time when I was going through those things, but I literally had the experience of having joy and hope in those times through God when I was literally at my weakest, and he had got me out of them. And it's really interesting because it just shows that when you go through suffering, whatever it is, that's when you experience growth. And with growth comes wisdom. And so there are a few, and I want to just leave it with this, and I want to relate it to psychology now with science. And so one more thing about the Bible, there are a few verses that I'd like to just read out in terms of how tribulation and things that happen that are bad can actually produce good later. And so in James 1 verses 2-5, it says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Meaning that when you are faced with bad times, you will grow in wisdom. And if you don't feel like you're growing in wisdom, pray to God about it and He will give it to you. And then in Romans it says, not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us. Once again, complementing what was said by James. And this was written by Paul after James. And then in Proverbs it says, blessed are those who find wisdom, those who gain understanding, for she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand. In her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life. Those who take hold of her, those who hold her fast will be blessed. And so that is basically saying that if you develop your character through God through your suffering, you're going to have more peace on the other side of it. And you're going to actually also have peace through it when you put all of your faith onto Him and you cast your anxieties onto Him. Now, there are so many other ones that I've got here as well. But what the point is that it's basically saying through suffering, you can experience growth, which can better your life for future suffering. And why that is so amazing is because the literature now in resilience, if you look at the literature in resilience, there is a study conducted by Maston in 2001 and a bunch of other ones, but I'm just going to read this one out. And this paper argues that resilience is a common phenomenon resulting from ordinary developmental processes, suggesting that positive outcomes in the face of adversity are not as exceptional as previously thought. Maston describes resilience as a class of phenomena characterized by good outcomes in spite of serious threats to adaptation or development. So they're showing that you can build resilience through your traumas and it can have positive outcomes later in your life. Now, post-traumatic growth as well is another one. So there are a couple studies here by Tedeschi and others about the post-traumatic growth inventory, which measures the positive legacy of trauma. And they are showing the same things, that for a select amount of individuals, you can have something bad happen, experience it, build resilience, and have more adaptive outcomes later. Now, this isn't for everyone, but these are the things that I was looking at before I came to faith in how I can be so I can get out of this misery. And there's this man called Nassim Nicholas Taleb who has introduced this concept called anti-fragility. And anti-fragility goes beyond resilience or robustness. It describes the systems that improve or become stronger when exposed to stresses, volatility, and shocks. And so this is a new area, well, not a new area, but another area in which is currently being investigated. And it all complements what the Bible says. And we're using science to prove that you can, and it is possible to experience bad things and have resilience afterwards. So the point of this talk was to give you hope. And from the bottom of my heart, I seriously hope that no matter what you're going through, I pray that you experience peace and joy after it. Because if anything, my life is not perfect. I'm not going to say that I'm happier now than what I was before. There are moments where I experience peak happiness. There are moments where I'm sadder. But I can tell you with 100% honesty and certain, I have experienced happiness and joy after experiencing the loss of my father. And if you are experiencing something similar or something extreme, I just want you to know that anything is possible and that you can get out of it. I promise you, you can. It does take work, and there are going to be days where you can't be bothered, and there are going to be step backs, and there's probably going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but eventually you will be able to get there. Whether it's a health concern, whether it's a mental concern, whether it's, things in your family that are literally outside of your control, it will eventually get better. There are ways to do it. And my goal on here is to present you with as much research as possible and as much knowledge of what I learn from the Bible as I continue to grow. Because like I said, I'm so new to it, but I'm literally being so vulnerable as a baby, what you'd call a baby Christian, putting it out here and saying, this is where I'm at, I'm new, this is where I currently believe, this is where I think we're going to be going. And I might make mistakes along the way, but I'm being vulnerable in my journey. And so that's all I wanted to say for today. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it helped you in some way. But thank you, and I'll speak to you in the next video.